All right, so we are back. And I did say in our previous segment that we're going to be talking about world champions from short-lived promotions. And I wanted to bring that up because AEW, with their Double or Nothing event, celebrated their 3rd anniversary last week. So I thought that that would be a great little segment to go into when we're talking about pretty much the crown jewel of any wrestling promotion, and that is their world champion. For male, women, tag team, etc., it doesn't matter. But I wanted to talk about at least some of the examples all over the world to really sort of grasp on not only the companies, but where these world champions went. Because there are companies that maybe had 2 world champions that lasted just as long, if not longer, than AEW. Will you stop playing around with that stupid thing on the ground, please? So, Herb Abrams, our favorite boot-wearing, cocaine-addicted, heart attack-giving motherfucker. I love this episode of Dark Side of the Ring, but the UWF that Herb Abrams ran had a very complicated title history because Herb Abrams had a fascination with introducing new champions to the promotion. And with their 5-year reign on television that they had almost 12 championships. And even some that were introduced at their final show, ironically, here in Las Vegas in September of 1994. We're going to talk about their 2 world champions because both of them are equally as important but equally as interesting. And we're going to first talk about the title that Mr. Herb here is holding on to, a very unique title, and that's called the UWF Sports Channel Television Championship. That was their main title for the main life of the UWF. They did not have a world champion up until the final show of the UWF. This title was introduced in 1991 and went through 1992. The issue is that there was a 1.5-year spell where there was no primary champion at all with this company. They did not drop it. They just stopped defending it and mentioning it on television. The belt that you see there is that infamous championship that a lot of people love. I love the title, by the way. It was introduced in a 16-man tournament in a TV taping in April of 1991 and in June of 1991, so it spanned that distance. And the winner was crowned in the final match at Beach Brawl. And it was named after the sports channel, the network that aired the UWF Weekly with Fury Hour. The names are amazing, by the way. So there were that was actually the XWF, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But the other one that they introduced after the sports channel basically took them off of the air was the UWF Heavyweight Champion. And that was introduced on September 23rd, 1994, here in Las Vegas. I think they actually were in MGM Grand, by the way. So that's kind of a cool little nod to that. And it was given to Dr. Death Steve Williams. And that was it. It was not defended. It was not owned. He had the title for the show. And that was pretty much it due to outside circumstances because Herb Abrams is our favorite. Kind of. Cool. So let's talk about our next title. This is not irony. Jeff Jarrett was the last champion of the World Wrestling All-Stars, or the WWA World Heavyweight Champion. This was an Australian-based promotion that worked very closely with early TNA. So 2002 to 2003 was kind of when this promotion existed. It was right out of the tail end of the WCW promotion. because there were a lot of companies that actually tried to capitalize on the huge influx of talent that came out of the closure of the WCW promotion. I don't know why I keep saying that. But the World Wrestling All-Stars was actually one that was very significant because it actually got quite a bit of publicity during its life. It did international tours. It actually did a tour here in America. It had a couple of really big events because the owner of this promotion was actually a multi-millionaire in Australia. So that was kind of an interesting old thing. I can't remember his name. But this championship that Jeff Jarrett is holding, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, was introduced in 2000. It was unified in 2003, but it was introduced in 2001, where Road Dogg was the first champion, and Scott Steiner had the longest reign with this champion for 190 days, and Jeff Jarrett, that's seen here, had a unification match with both the NWA World Heavyweight and the WWA World Heavyweight Champions on the line. I wanted to bring this one up because the WWA, once again, had some money working behind it, but unfortunately the owner did not surround himself with the right people, and also they tried to expand too quickly because they were Australian-based. And Australia was popular with wrestling, but they wanted to do a European tour. They wanted to do the United States tour. They just were working too fast for its own good, which was a detriment. Also, the WWA was plagued actually due to 9/11 because some of them were actually stuck in Australia when all the planes were grounded in September of 2001. So that's kind of fun. Let's talk about this one. If this looks very unfamiliar, this was the Wrestling Society X champion. There were only 2 champions that held this title, and this promotion was in mid-2000, so 2005. The first champion was Vampiro, who won a 10-man WSX Rumble, and it was aired on January 30th, 2007. And Vampiro won when he tombstoned X-Pac, I am not kidding you, into an exploding casket, and that's how the match ended. If you ever want to watch stuff with Wrestling Society X, this was a fucking crazy promotion. They had all extreme matches. They had very heavily produced explosions, and it was crazy. And especially in that era where they try to keep that energy of it was high intense stuff. Like it was a 30-minute wrestling show, and they packed it with 4 to 5 matches each episode. So what they did was that they took the matches and they edited them down into like 5-minute segments with explosions and CGI effects. And it was the craziest stuff ever. But this was actually their only championship. Not only their world champion, but their only title. So there were only 2 champions that held this title. And that was Vampiro and Ricky Banderas, also known now as Mil Muertes, in MLW. I had to think about that for a second. And when the promotion closed in March of 2007, Banderas was stripped of the title, and currently the title is MIA. We do not know where it is. We do not know who owns it or even if it exists anymore. And we say that because there was a YouTube video actually that came out of a defunct channel. I can't remember the name of it. Actually, around the time of this, where they were destroying a champion that looked very similar to this. The quality, due to it being 2007, was not as good as it was. Right. So it was hard to really distinguish on if it was a title. But people saw the 2 red stars, and they're like, "Is that the WSX champion?" All right. So we do not know the fate of the title.
Right.
Which is kind of an interesting little tidbit there, too. Oh, you got to talk about
I love this. GFW.
The Global Force Wrestling Global Champion. So the history of this title. Now, I'm not going to be talking about it going into the Impact Wrestling stage because actually there were only 2 champions with this title, even with the unification. So obviously this title was introduced when Jeff Jarrett started the Global Force Wrestling promotion. Once again, he tried to do too much too quickly and tried to run too big of arenas for the sake of it because he wanted to do the baseball field tour, which, once again, good in hindsight or good in actuality, but in hindsight, not the best thing. It's almost like communism. Good on paper, not good in execution. Oh, come on. So they had like 600, they had like, 200 people in the stadium that could probably hold 15,000 people. Didn't look great. So the GFW champion was first won by Nick Aldis, who held the title for 547 days. And Alberto El Patron was the last champion, and those were the only 2 champions.
Cool.
Also, fun fact, this was the only champion that that still currently has a dragon on its title faceplate. That's what that thing is there. It's a dragon. This was the original Global Force Wrestling champion without the blue globes. That was actually a mistake by the belt-making company. Jeff Jarrett wanted the blue globes, and they neglected to do so because they were working on the next-gen champion. So, fun fact there. Let's talk about our last one. The XWF World Champion. Now, this one is weird because this was a promotion that was started by Jim Sags of the Nasty Boys. I think that's it. We're just going to go roll with it.
I have my computer down here. I don't know.
And then also Jimmy Hart. And the X stood for nothing.
Cool.
It was literally just called X Wrestling Federation. Now, after a while, the owners, actually Jimmy Hart became the president of the company and said it was for excellent with an X. By the way, this company was started in 2003. So, obviously, that's kind of where that was. So, no, it started in 2001. I'm sorry. Pardon me. So, once again, this was another WCW sort of offshoot promotion that tried to capitalize on the influx of talent. Now, despite the promotion having talents like Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Mr. Perfect, and many more of that caliber of wrestler on there, none of them held this champion. There were 2 champions. There was Ian Harrison. If you don't know who that is, don't worry about it. He only wrestled for this promotion. And Viscera. Viscera held this champion before Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan wrestled in this promotion. He did not hold this title.
Okay.
Yes, because he was in between 2 different things. Right. But so the XWF is kind of interesting because they only had the 2 champions. They had huge marquee talents, and they just could not get the title off of anybody. And unfortunately, the company was going to be making a revival in 2008 after it closed its doors in 2003. And also there was talks of it coming back in 2013. But the website was deactivated in 2017. But somebody actually was still responding to emails and keeping up to date on current wrestling matters and updates on the promotion's revival up until 2016. So that's kind of a cool little thing there. So those were some examples of those champions of short-lived companies, just like our friendly AEW. Because of their 3rd anniversary, I thought this was appropriate. So when we come back, we're not only going to somehow, because it'll be easy as shit, make Double or Nothing majestic again and AEW majestic again, but we're going to make pro wrestling majestic again.